Hey, Alex out here with Remax Select Properties. Chris and David couldn't be here. Our schedules just don't line up this month. But I'm here with a very special guest, which we'll get to. Quickly, we're going to go over some of the stats over the last month, as usual. So for the month of September, houses in Vancouver East continue to drop 3%. Vancouver West dropped 2.3%. Vancouver East townhomes dropped 3.4%. Vancouver West townhomes dropped 0.2%. Vancouver East condos dropped 2.2%, and Vancouver West dropped 0.9%. So the trend of increasing supply and reducing sales is still continuing right now because of the rise of interest rates. Now, I know a lot of people are kind of on the sidelines and waiting to see what happens. So I have a special guest today. He was a member of the top 40 under 40 in Vancouver. He is one of the most established legal search. He owns one of the most established legal search firms in not just the city, not just the country, but North America. He is very accomplished in his own right and has gone through a lot of real estate transactions of his own, of course. So we are going to kind of pick his brain a little bit on what the opportunities are, how his thought process has changed over the years. So this is Warren Smith with Smith Legal Search. Hey Warren, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I really wanted to pick your brain, having so much experience in whether it's in the business world, in real estate, in finance, in politics, in you've dabbled your feet in everything pretty much. And obviously we're talking about real estate today. So I wanted to see, I know that when you first bought a place or first owned a place with your now wife, you had a little townhouse kind of in the close to the Falls Creek area.
In Falls Creek, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was cool to be there, I think. It was probably cool to be there. Then I got there and stopped being cool. And then I left, it's cool again.
So being a self-made man, how did you go from that to make a huge leap to where you are now? Right now you have a mansion with a huge backyard, and you're digging into a pool right now.
That's right, yeah.
And you just spent $1 billion on that. So how did you do that? How did you make the leap into getting bigger and bigger? How did your mentality change as you're looking to buy and sell properties?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the short version is that I've never been married to any of the houses we've lived in. And it's not that I go into any house thinking that we're going to flip it. For better or for worse, all for better. My wife has been along with me on the ride. I think sometimes she gets a little bit frustrated that I spend way too much time thinking about real estate. She probably blames you, frankly.
Yeah, probably.
That's fine. But we've been blessed with 4 kids, and so I think as every kid has come along, it's often made us stop and think if the house that we're in is going to meet the needs of the family. And I think that some of those things are just serendipity. That's just how the life has gone. But I think a lot of it was early on, we adopted a mindset that the house is not the forever house for us. And that's not for everybody, but I think the benefit of that is it's allowed us to look at our property purchases and sales with probably a bit more of a clinical view, and just in terms of what makes the most sense for us. And I think we think a lot more about the house as we're going in with the view towards what's it going to look like when we come out.
Okay, so, but obviously we couldn't really forecast what it's going to be when you need to sell, when you need to move. So let's say right now, for example, high interest rates and low number of sales, prices dropping.
Yeah.
If you need to move now, what would be your move?
I think the short answer is I wouldn't. But if I had to move, I think a lot of people, and I suspect you're probably seeing this better than I would, I think a lot of people probably pause and wonder maybe they should rent the place out and sort of wait until there is a better window. Mm-hmm. But I think, back to your earlier point, when I think about real estate, for me, and I don't know if this is true, but like the heuristic I always apply is you make all your money when you buy the place, not when you sell the place. That so much of the opportunity for our family has come by looking for great opportunities to purchase and then trusting that when you have to sell, the market is the market. So if I had to sell right now, my goal would be to have bought the place when we did on a very good basis. And so there's levels to that. One is just recognizing when good deals come up. I think the terrible risk of inflating your ego, having a good realtor, in the wings that keeps you apprised certainly helps. And if you're doing your homework and roughly what you're looking for, the deals happen when most of the market's going the other way. So the irony is there might actually be good deals in the market right now to
There
buy.
actually are, yeah.
I don't know about the sale. That's, for me right now, we're not in a place where we have to sell. But even if I had to sell right now, I know that when we bought this place, we got it at such a good deal. We talked about this, that we're so far ahead that even if the market has slid, whether it's 3 or 5 or even 10%, we bought at such a good point that that was already essentially priced in.
Right.
So it wouldn't be my ideal time to sell if I didn't have to. I would certainly try and time it a little bit better, but yeah, you're right. Like, life happens, things happen in life, and maybe you take a job somewhere, you got to move, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, from my perspective, I look at when I'm making the deal, it's all about when I'm going in as opposed to when I'm coming out.
So back to my original question, how did your mentality change from the first purchase, let's say?
Yeah.
And I'm sure at that time, just like anyone's first purchase, my first purchase, it was all dollars and cents. I want to make sure it worked. Like, I want to make sure the I can afford the mortgage every month. I want to make sure there's money left over to our savings and this and that. So,
I think my suspicion is, if people are like me, your first home, it's very easy to get lulled into, is this like a forever home? Is this where I'm going to live for a long time? And I think that tends to color a lot of the thought process. And I think for a lot of my friends, what held them off into getting in and just sort of getting into the property market is they wanted to find that perfect place. And even if they knew that wasn't like the perfect place for the rest of their life, they still were very particular. And I think that was certainly how we approached the first place we bought. But as we've bought houses as our family has grown, I've at least come to look at it as, this is a house that's, maybe for the next 5 years, certainly not the next 50 years. And so it changes a little bit about how I think about it. So it allows me to think about the purchase more from what's a good entry point, what's a good deal, at risk of thinking about houses as just straightly transaction. I think about some of the stuff in terms of, proximity to kids' school and, where do I need to be to get to work, and, where are my, wife and our family friends. But those are all kind of layers as part of a bigger picture of like, what's a good opportunity to be buying into. So, and maybe I got to bolt loose on that. Like, I do think about primary residence as being just one of the things that we have in, sort of our portfolio of investments, for lack of a better term.
So then, if that's the case, today, obviously prices are lower than yesterday, than 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So wouldn't that make today the best time to buy?
I mean, I think it turns a little bit on what's your financial position.
Right.
Again, I'm not an expert when it comes to real estate. You're the expert here, I hope. I think a lot of it turns on what is the cost to borrow.
Right.
Like, how much money do you need to make a purchase in a market like this? I mean, you can argue and say, well, if you're cash rich, then you can buy property at a deal right now. There may be some truth to that, but my understanding is for most people, if they're doing real estate as an investment, even if it's their primary residence, part of the value in the investment is the fact that you are able to borrow money, so you can leverage your money to buy something bigger.
Right.
When that leverage gets expensive, as it is right now, and to be fair, I mean, we say it's expensive, but I mean, it's been at this level of interest in my life, and hopefully I'm not that old. It's certainly not dating back to where the 80s were, where it was 15, 18, 20% interest rates. So it's still relatively a reasonable number, I think, in terms of interest. More expensive than for a lot of people they've seen. But yeah, I mean, I think that depending on how much equity you happen to have in your house, there certainly are some deals. I think the way I'd look at it is, it's probably not the forever interest rate. Maybe it is, but I mean, we're probably on a bit of a run up, and if the Bank of Canada is to be believed, they want to have a target interest rate back to 2% by the end of 2024, which would suggest that you may be in a short window where it's expensive on the interest rate, but long term, the price of the house might actually be a really good deal right now. So yeah, I mean, I think if I were in a position where I was shopping and I was looking to buy something right now, there might be some interesting opportunities. But again, that's your field, not mine.
And that's something we've discussed over the last few months too. To take advantage of the price without forking over the interest. It's just variable rate temporarily until it drops back down, and then lock in a low fixed rate.
Yeah.
But right now, we kind of just touched on this last month too. Although the prices are dropping, the interest rate has gone up so much that it's costing a lot more. Probably over $1,000 per million per month.
Yeah.
And that's all interest.
Yeah.
100% of that is interest. You don't get any of that back.
Yeah.
So it's actually costing more right now. It's more expensive right now, despite what the people think by looking at the prices.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to clear that up, and I'm glad you brought that point up. As a person who, I think is really smart.
I tricked him too.
So that's part of the consideration now.
Yeah.
It's not like when we first started buying homes, or that you're just looking at that price.
Yeah, I think I think like all things, as you get more experience and you have an opportunity to see a couple of rounds or a couple of iterations in the market, it does allow you to think a little bit longer term. Because if it is, let's call it, to your point, $1,000 per $1 million of mortgage. And I don't know how long is this, this run going to, last. Let's say it's 3 years of a higher interest inflationary environment. Just to be conservative.
Right.
Well, if you were borrowing that $1 million over the next 3 years, it was cost you an extra $1,000 a month. Well, that's $36,000. But if the house is decreased by 10% in value and you've just saved $100,000, then you're up still over $70,000, right? Like you've actually saved a good chunk of money in that period of time. So again, I think, I think this is probably true of a lot of things. My general philosophy in life is if everyone's running one way, I want to think really hard about whether I should be running the other, right? And so my bias has always been, if people are fleeing, I'm looking, very aggressively into the market. I can tell you in my 20 years, the single best house purchase I've made to date was in the middle of the financial crisis in 2008, 2009.
When everyone's selling.
And I took all my money out of savings. My wife was like, this is either going to be the greatest decision or the worst decision you've made.
And you're still here.
She stuck with me.
Yeah.
So, but we bought into a market when everybody was panicked. And I think we doubled our money on that one house purchase because basically everyone was running one way and we were going the other. And it was terrifying. Like my stomach dropped because I took money out of my savings and out of the RSP and, did everything we could just to get in. Because at that point we were going from a townhouse up to a house. That was a big leap for us. And I remember thinking, this mortgage might just kill me. But now I look at that and say, that is what allowed us to really get into Vancouver property market. That, honestly, if we hadn't made that move, we probably would have got there eventually. But that thing catapulted us forward in a way that certainly nothing in my job would have allowed me to do at that time.
Okay, cool. So now if we back up a little, well, not back up, but expand it a little bit to your business, to kind of the economics in general.
Yeah.
How does that mentality of running the other way when everyone's running one way affect you and your business? And how that has kind of shaped the mega success you've had in such a short time frame?
Yeah. Well, I think that from my perspective, I leaped into my running my own business at a time when I didn't know that the market was going to go sort of as hot as it had for the last few years, at least on the recruitment side and executive search. But I think that the decisions we made set us up so that we had some room to maneuver, and it just so happened that we maneuvered into one of the white hot periods in the market. Now I think, frankly, there's a bit of cooling going on. I think, certainly in the eastern markets, and we've got offices in Toronto, there's certainly some concern that there may be a turn or there may be a recession, sort of in the wings. But again, I think that like anything in life, I'm looking for who are the clients that want to build in that kind of a market, because there's always contrarians in any market. And so those types of clients, also recognize, I think like we do, that some of the greatest opportunities present when the market shifts, right? Like big shifts in a market are what open up opportunities, right? In my business, they often say money hides a lot of problems, right? So when everybody's making a lot of money and everything's going gangbusters, you don't have to have a particularly strong business, to be honest, in a market like that. But when a market, slows up or cools or, heaven forbid, goes in the other direction, then you see where the fundamentals are. I'm sure you see it in real estate. I bet you in a down market, I don't know how many realtors bow out, just like how many jump in when it gets hot. but there's always the mainstays, and you've already been through a few of these, that you know who the guys are that are going to be there when the bottom falls out, because you've taken the time, you've got good fundamentals. So to me, that's the same sort of model I apply in our business. The same thing I say to my team is that we're here for the long term. I've been doing this 20 years. I've been through enough cycles to know. I know who our core clients are, and I know what clients that are going to make moves in down markets look like. And that's just a lot of what you shift your thinking to. So honestly, a lot of similarities, I think, between real estate. I think you and I have talked about this before, that in a lot of ways, search has a lot of analogs to real estate, because like real estate, you have buyers and you have sellers, and a lot of what you're doing in this business is trying to line those parties up to try and figure out where are the right matches in the market. Right. And if you do it well, doors are always open.
Right. But you do charge a little more than I do on commissions.
I do a lot less business than you do too, so it's okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I think we've all learned a lot. I really, really like that mentality, kind of diagnostics, if you will, and that shift to really know kind of the different stages of what you really focus on and what you look at to get you into where you are today. So thank you so much for that. So we are done with the October market update, and we hope to see you next month. Again, the market's still dropping price-wise, interest rates still high, and there's a lot more listings and slightly less sales, so you have your pickings if you're really looking for opportunities. So if you are, give me a call, 604-374-5534, and we'll see you next month.